Welcome back to another session of creative play. Today I'm just playing with ACEO cards. I don't really have any kind of plan for them. I just wanted to start playing and have some fun and really just immerse myself in no actual thought or planning. So I'm going to follow whatever happens and see where it ends up. I usually create art while I'm watching a movie or listening to some music. And so I've removed all of the original audio because, of course, that would create an issue with copywriting. So the video itself is something new this time. I'm going to talk a little bit during it, just sort of telling you what's happening or what I'm doing. And I'll pop in occasionally when there's something I want to tell you or something I think you need to know. But other than that, this is just going to be a quiet pass through of me creating. And I also put it on double speed so that it's not super long. And I will edit out certain areas that maybe don't need to be too long if they're in there. Might be me drying the pass through, and maybe it takes a little longer than I think you want to watch on the video. So here we are. Welcome back. I've been quiet for a while. Life gets in the way and things happened. But right now I'm just taking a very large piece of paper, and I really don't want to bother with excessive calculations. So I'm taping out a border, and then within that border, I will mark out the standard size for an ACEO card, which is roughly 2.5 by about 3. I'd have to double check that measurement, but I believe that's about what it is. And so I'm just sort of simply marking that out and then putting some tape on here to give me kind of a grid pattern. And you'll see, rather than spending an exorbitant amount of time trying to figure out the calculations and the spacing for the tape and all that good stuff, I'm simply I measured out the first width, put down my tape, and then measured the next width, put down my tape, and measured the next width. And what ultimately happened here is that I will have more than a whole series, and that last row isn't actually the 2.5 inches wide, which is totally fine. It doesn't matter. I have a whole series of about, I think there's 12 that are the exact size, and then 3 that are not. And it doesn't really matter. And now I'm just repeating the process in the other direction with the other measurement. So we'll end up with 2.5 by 3 inch blocks with an equal amount of spacing in between. That's the size of the tape. And that takes care of all of the details without getting super complicated into the math of calculating the exact size. And then I'm just cutting off some of the excess just so I have, the paper's pretty large, so I just wanted to have something a little bit more manageable and that would kind of fit into this viewing screen so that you can see a bit better. I'm using these watercolors that I absolutely love. I will put the link to those in the description just in case you're interested. They are called Kuretake watercolors. They are the most amazing colors ever. I love to use these. So right now I'm just getting them a little bit wet and getting them prepped and ready. You know, again, it's important to understand that I really don't plan this at all. other than knowing I'm going to tape off a grid and that I'm going to use these watercolors to get started. Beyond that, I've thought of nothing. I didn't even think about, well, how do I want to get the color on there? What am I doing? I'm just literally letting whatever happens, happens. And I think for a lot of people, that's a really hard place to be. There's some sort of expectation that you're supposed to do something specific. And really, the point of creating is to just literally play with the stuff. And that could be a myriad of ways that that could look for you. For me, this is just what I'm doing. I'm just being inspired by which color is speaking to me. And then I'm just putting it down on the paper. I really think the hardest thing for most people is to realize that the best thing to do when creating is to just stop thinking about what you're trying to do or what the outcome will be. That's where the most interesting things happen and when you have the most fun and enjoy what you're doing. And I just realized that I think I said the size of the card is 2.5 by 3, but it's 2.5 by 3.5. Don't hold me to it. Please check that and get your own size. So here, I just think it's a bit too rigid, so I'm just sort of adding a little bit of water to sort of blend them out a little bit. Right now, I'm just trying to get some base colors down, and I remembered that if you use salt, this is sea salt, and you add it into your watercolor, you get a bit of a grainy look. So I'm just putting some salt on there so that I can sort of create this grainy effect. So I'm just taking a bit of a heat gun dryer just to kind of speed up the process, because if you've watched any of my videos, you know I'm super impatient and I don't want to wait. My creative time is very limited and I don't like to have to leave things and come back an hour later or the next day, because that my schedule just won't allow me to do that. So I'm always in a rush when I create, which I would imagine most people are, and that's okay. So I used the dryer to speed it up a little bit. And so now I felt the need to use a heavy art pencil, charcoal, just to get some lines on there. Again, I'm not thinking about really anything that I'm doing, um, just having some fun. I had this stencil sitting nearby. It's been sitting out for a while. I don't know. It's kind of been speaking to me, and I kind of thought, do I want to use this now here? I have these pencils. I don't really know what they are. They're kind of like a wax crown of some sort, but they're really soft. And I thought, well, do I want to use these? And so I just the stencil just wasn't speaking to me, so I just set it aside. And so now I have a love of these sort of pebbly shapes. They're very free form. And I just thought, well, instead of using the stencil, I'll just draw some in. And so that's what I'm doing now. I'm just using a pencil, and it's an artist pencil, and it's heavy charcoal. And I'm just drawing in these random shapes. I pay no attention to the fact that the tape is there. In other words, when I tape a grid like this, I'm not trying to create within the little boxes. I'm creating one giant board, which also is very helpful. The beauty of this is it kind of creates this connected but disconnected series of cards. And so I treat the entire work surface as one giant piece. And then when I pull the tape, you have separation. Um, and so that makes it very fun too, because you don't really know what you're going to get until you pull the tape. So now I'm just adding in some more watercolor onto the pebbles, if you will, or rocks, or random shapes, whatever you want to call them. I like to call them pebbles or rocks. And I've just added in a second color. I like the contrast between this really deep purple and this heavy teal blue. And now I'm just sort of taking a black and adding in sort of a shadow side. Um, the goal here is to just give the shapes a little bit more depth. And I'm just coming back in with a little bit more once some of it dries, and this will give it a really nice variegated textural look to it. And now I'm just doing one of the other things I really love to do is to just do some freeform lines in here. I'm using a Posca marker. These are super free form. I really don't think about it. I like to sort of double do them so that you get sort of this maze, if you will, that creates all these little voids or other spaces, other shapes that become very interesting and very free form. So right now, I'm just really trying to decide, well, what do I want to do next? What's speaking to me? So now I'm just taking a thicker Posca marker and kind of outlining the shapes, just to give it even more depth and give those rocks or pebbles sort of the jump off the page feel. One of the other things I've really always loved to incorporate is, you know, sort of the highlight and the low light, the shadow and the highlight. That really helps to give things depth. And so right now I'm using one of these waxy crowns. I really don't know what they are. They were given to me and they don't really have a name on the outside. So I'll look them up and see if I can find them and list them in the description for you in case you're interested. Um, they must be water based because if I add water to them, they will turn into sort of like a watercolor. But anyway, I'm using this as to create this sort of highlight side of the pebble that's opposite of where I put in the dark watercolor to make it shadowed. And now I'm just using a white Posca to give it even more of a specific highlight on the tip of the area. If you were to imagine the light was coming in from the right side of the screen over to the left, that side of the rock would sort of have a bit, it would reflect the light a little bit. Okay, I did find that these crown sticks are they're by King Art, and they are a gel stick crown. They're water soluble gel crowns. So I did put that link in the description box for you. If you'd like, I think those are them. Again, these were given to me as a gift. I don't really know. Anyway, the next step here is I'm taking a black gel ink pen, um, and I'm just adding in there. It's just scribble freeform lines. I love to do this. I always incorporate this in a lot of my work. It's very relaxing. There's no rhyme or reason to what I'm doing. I'm just adding them in. The only thing that's specific right now is I'm trying to ensure each taped area will have some of it. Meaning that each card, each ACEO card will have some of that black ink scribble, if you will. And so now what I'm doing is I'm taking a thicker Posca marker and I'm actually going back over some of the shapes that have appeared through the earlier sort of squiggly line application, and I'm just giving them a little bit more definition. I love to sort of create that, and that sort of comes from that neurographical style of art. This is not that, but it's very similar in a lot of ways. So effectively, I'm sort of rounding out the shapes a little bit, but not too specific like you do in neurographical work. If you haven't done any neurographical art, you should definitely try that. In fact, I think I'm going to do that as one of my upcoming videos. I'm trying to really get back into the routine of doing at least one video a week. I, as you know, if you're watching this, you're probably a creative and you're trying to look for inspiration and learn some new things. I love to share that process because I don't think there's enough of it out there. Even though there's tons of it, there's always room for more. And everybody's style is so different, and there's something to be learned from everyone. And I've gotten away from my practice a bit because life is so busy, and I'm trying to be deliberate about it. And committing to you to record helps me be accountable. And so now I'm just adding in some white. I love to add in these pops of white with the Posca marker, and it's just sort of random little dashes, if you will. It adds some interest. The only definitive thing I'm trying to do here is to ensure that there is some on every card section. I did go over the white dashes twice to make them a little bit stronger. And now I'm just coming back in one more time and redoing the black outline on the rock or pebble shape. So another thing I love to do is incorporate metallic. I never really know where I'm going to do that or how I'm going to do that. So we're going to be doing that. Right now, I'm also using a white gel pen to add another line around the pebble. I kind of regretted this a little bit after doing it for a couple of reasons. I don't think the gel pen is a strong enough white line. I probably would have preferred to do this more specific with a Posca marker, but I didn't. And so it is what it is. And I'm just going to continue on with what I'm doing. I didn't really have that thought till later, but that's okay. So at this point, I haven't done the metallic just yet. I'm pulling the tape. If you've watched my videos, you know pulling tape is quite the issue. Although I do have to say that this pulling tape session went very well, and I was super pleased with it. I love to pull the tape. It's like opening the present because you really see a totally different creation than what you just think you created. And part of that is because you're sort of making one giant board, and then when you pull the tape, you get different little blocks of just beautiful pieces. It's kind of like if you were to take a square picture frame mat that didn't have a picture in it and put that down on your art and move it around, you'd have different little art vignettes appear. That's kind of what happens when you remove the tape, and it's so satisfying to do. You can really start to see the individual cards appear here now. And like I said, the way that I designed this box, because I didn't really calculate the math or think about that part really at all, other than making sure the cards were the same, I actually ended up with 12 cards in this. Well, there's 15 in the series, 12 of which are the exact ACEO card size at 2.5 by 3.5, and three of them are slightly smaller, which is perfectly okay. You know, I was just creating and having fun, not really meaning to have super specific results. But I think these came out really good. I love the interest in each one. And now I'm experimenting with putting a little black line around it. Right now I'm just testing a Sharpie, which ultimately I won't use. I will use a Posca marker to do this. I just want to see, and you can notice I'm testing on the three smaller ones in case I don't like it. Ultimately what's happening here is I don't think that the Sharpie is black enough and thick enough. That's one of the things I love about a Posca marker is it's so rich and thick and black. The Sharpie tends to, depending on the type of paper, because Sharpies are alcohol based, so you get some evaporation and it sort of gets a little bit softer, if you will. So now I'm using the Posca and I'm adding in some gold dots. You won't really be able to see these details on camera as much as you can in person because they're just ever so tiny and I'm just going around the white dashes. Be sure to stick around to the end and I'll show you the individual cards and how they look one by one. I just want to say thank you for watching. I hope it inspired you to do something. My sole goal with this is to just have a recording of what it was I did in a process, hopefully inspire you to be creative. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more of this type of content. And like I said, I'll be returning with one video a week. I'm not going to burden you with excess amount of videos, just the perfect amount of real, genuine content. And hang tight here. I'm going to show you the finished cards one by one. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.